the Coachella Valley's perfect mix of sunny weather, iconic events, and unique desert experiences, it's no wonder that this area attracts investors from all over.
But choosing where to invest in the greater Palm Springs area isn't as simple as just picking a spot on a map.
Each individual city in the valley, from Palm Springs all the way to Coachella, has its own pros and cons and regulations that could make or break your business case for investing there.
This don't look like the Coachella Valley to me.
Today, we're going to give you an insider's look at each city in the greater Palm Springs area, and we're going to cover everything from market demand to the pros and cons of running an operation there.
And be sure to stick through to the end of this video because we'll be giving some never before shared insight onto exactly where and what type of property we would personally invest in 2025.
If you're new around here, I'm Steven.
And I'm Kylie, and we are a husband and wife team of real estate investors and property managers here in the Coachella Valley. And we specialize in short-term rentals and monthly furnished rentals, which we call midterm rentals.
Over the last 5 years, we've helped investors navigate every step of the process, from narrowing down property options to full service interior design and setup to property management and ongoing operations at a short-term rental.
And during that time, we've learned a lot about the market here and what it takes to operate a top performing rental in each unique city.
Whether you're new to short-term rentals or a seasoned investor, this video is going to be packed with all the information you need to make a smart decision in one of the hottest vacation rental markets around.
So if you're ready to deep dive into the Palm Springs short-term rental market and find the perfect spot for your next investment, go ahead and click that like button and let's get started.
Let's kick things off with Palm Springs proper.
Palm Springs has its own unique vibe compared to other desert cities. With its retro mid-century style, its iconic architecture, and its bustling downtown area.
Palm Springs sees strong demand in the peak season of November to April, but also good demand in the shoulder months on either side of those dates.
While you should have no problem booking the festival weekends in April, do keep in mind that it is a 40-minute drive to the actual festival grounds for Coachella and Stagecoach. Festival goers are probably going to want to stay in closer cities like La Quinta or Indio, and that will affect pricing.
The city of Palm Springs has some of the strictest regulations in the area, and you're only allowed 26 total rentals in the year, which does require some strategic planning and marketing for your house.
To get started, you'll need to apply for a short-term vacation rental permit, which currently costs around $1,100 per year, and you'll also need to schedule a safety inspection and provide the city with proof of insurance and some other documentation.
The whole process can take a little while, and in the past we've had clients had to wait anywhere from like 3 to 8 weeks depending on the load of the permit department in the city. So that's something to keep in mind.
We have had one client who's been waiting over a year for a permit, but that's because this person bought in a neighborhood that had already reached its cap.
Unlike some cities who have set the maximum number of permits in the city as a whole, the city of Palm Springs went neighborhood by neighborhood and set a maximum number of permits per neighborhood. So that's something to keep in mind.
If you do find yourself on a wait list for a permit, you can always list it as a midterm rental temporarily until you get your permit, but also keep in mind that we've seen midterm demand be lower in Palm Springs versus other desert cities.
Compliance here is a big thing, and violations can lead to serious fines, so you want to make sure you stay on top of the regulations and follow them.
Another consideration before investing in Palm Springs is that nearly half of the homes are on leased land and not fee simple land.
This is unique to the city of Palm Springs, where many properties are actually on Native American tribal land, and along with that comes lease agreements with the tribe.
If the property you're eyeing is on leased land, you will be required to pay an annual leased land fee, which can affect your earnings and also your financing options.
Lenders have different requirements when it comes to leased land, and some won't even lend on leased land. So it's very important that you work with a local real estate agent who knows the ins and outs of working through leased land deals and also the short-term rental market regulations.
If you are in need of a trusted real estate broker for investing in any of the Coachella Valley cities, we will leave the contact info for ours in the description box below.
Another thing to keep in mind is that many parts of Palm Springs are often quite windy, especially as you get closer to the 10 freeway. There is a reason there's so many windmills as you approach the area.
Wow, look at that windmill.
So let's recap. The pros of investing in Palm Springs is that the city naturally draws a lot of tourism on its own, which can lead to high demand for your rental property and peak prices during the high season.
But on the con side, Palm Springs has some of the highest property prices in the area. The short-term rental regulations are strict. There's a lot of competition here, and then you have that quirky land lease to deal with as well in some cases.
Personally, we are steering clear of Palm Springs for investing for 2025. With high interest rates and high property prices, the numbers just don't match up with our investment goals right now, and we see better potential in other desert cities.
But if you have experience rehabbing properties, there is maybe an opportunity to pick up an off-market fixer and make a business case out of that.
So that's Palm Springs. Let's head a little bit east and see what Cathedral City has to offer.
Our pit stop in Cathedral City is going to be a quick one because there really isn't much of a short-term rental market here.
Short-term rentals in Cathedral City did have a good run for a few years, but the city has since put a moratorium on issuing new short-term rental permits, and they've also been phasing out existing STRs with the exception of a few HOAs.
The city does allow home sharing, which means you'd have to be on site and you can rent part of your home, so that doesn't really make sense for anyone trying to operate a traditional short-term rental.
On top of that, midterm rental demand is not as high in Cathedral City as it is in other parts of the valley, so it's not our go-to for monthly furnished rentals as well.
You may be able to make a business case for a mid-tier rental where you target medical professionals because there is close proximity to the large hospital in the area, but that isn't a target demographic that we've chosen to put sort of our sole focus into.
So that's our intel on Cathedral City. Let's continue moving east and see what Rancho Mirage has to offer investors.
Rancho Mirage is a city where we actually see it as a solid choice for midterm rentals, but not so much for short-term.
Rancho Mirage has always held a very strict stance on short-term rentals, basically banning them outright, with the exception of a few HOAs.
And those HOA options are few and far between, so there's pretty much no short-term rentals. But if you are considering midterm rentals, which is stays monthly or longer, then the city is one of our top picks for establishing a business for a midterm rental.
Midterm rentals work really well in Rancho Mirage because the city attracts a longer stay clientele. Think seasonal visitors, snowbirds coming from colder climates, and medical professionals.
The city also has a lot of larger homes with bigger lots and nice pools and good privacy, so it is a good option for people seeking more of a luxury stay.
Many of the properties in Rancho Mirage tend to have that upscale residential feel compared to some of the neighboring cities.
So if you're looking into a midterm rental in the city of Rancho Mirage, you'll want to target a larger, well-maintained home with a nice pool and yard, and then you'll also want to do a nice job with the interior design and setup, and then you should have a nice little business for a midterm rental.
Sounds easy enough.
Moving a little bit further east, we get to the city of Palm Desert. Like Palm Springs, this is a city with steady, nearly year-round demand. But unlike Palm Springs, short-term rentals are limited to a few select pockets with zoning classifications and also a few HOAs.
Palm Desert attracts a diverse range of travelers. You have things like families looking for a pool weekend, to golf enthusiasts, to those snowbirds looking to escape colder weather.
We live in Palm Desert, so we might be a little bit biased, but we like that it's a little more low-key when compared to Palm Springs, but it still has a lot of charm.
Like pretty much all cities these days, you are going to need a permit if you do have a home in one of those pocketed areas where the zoning allows short-term rentals or an HOA where they're allowed.
If the property isn't in a zoned pocket for STR, then you do have the option of midterm rentals in Palm Desert, but the difference here is that in Palm Desert, that is defined as 27 or more nights versus 30 or more nights in most other cities nearby.
This may not seem like a big deal, but let's say you have 29 nights between a booking, that 27-night minimum from the city could let you secure a booking in that window where other cities you may not. Or even if there was 35 days between two stays, just gives you a little more flexibility to fill those dates.
Like Palm Springs, Palm Desert is one of those cities where location is everything. For example, our properties that are near the El Paseo area are some of the top performers in our portfolio for the whole Coachella Valley.
As a recap, the city of Palm Desert has steady demand for both short and midterm rentals, and it does have more accessible prices compared to some of the hotspots in Palm Springs.
On the downside, it is going to be more difficult to find a location where you can do STR.
But if you're open to the idea of midterm rentals, or you do find one of those limited areas where short-term rentals are allowed, we think the city of Palm Desert is a smart choice for investing in 2025.
Moving further east, let's talk about Indian Wells.
This is a well-maintained and centrally located city that attracts a diverse mix of families, snowbirds, golf professionals, or tennis people, especially during the BNP Paribas Open in March.
Indian Wells enforces a 29-night minimum for most properties, so it's not your typical short-term rental market, but there are a few exceptions.
The first exception is during the BNP Paribas Open tennis tournament, where 7-night rentals are allowed if you have a short-term rental permit, which you can obtain from the city, and that allows you to capture high demand for the area during the tennis tournament.
The second exception is some HOAs that allow it. And while we generally shy away from investing in properties that are in an HOA, we do have some properties under management in Indian Wells in specific HOAs that just crush it.
For midterm rentals, Indian Wells is comparable to the performance in Rancho Mirage. Most people are looking for larger, well-maintained homes with nice pools and yards. They're often going to stay for longer, which means less turnovers.
So to recap, Indian Wells has a unique setup in that most of the time you are limited to 29-night rentals, but during the tennis tournament, you can do 7-night rentals with a permit.
The pros here are there is strong demand in those HOA zones where STRs are allowed, and then there also is a healthy midterm rental market elsewhere in the city.
The cons are the 29-night minimums for the rest of the year outside of the tennis tournament, and also high property prices.
Next, let's talk about Bermuda Dunes. This is a small, unincorporated area that doesn't get as much attention as some of the other desert cities, but for the right property, might be worth considering.
Because it's an unincorporated area, Bermuda Dunes falls under Riverside County regulations, which are generally less restrictive than the surrounding desert cities.
You'll need a short-term rental permit from the county, and their fees are generally less than other desert cities at around $700.
One thing to note, we do own a property in a different part of unincorporated Riverside County, so we have experience dealing with their short-term rental department, and sometimes it can be a nightmare, particularly with communication.
And it's not just slow, it's like super slow, like months to sometimes get a response to emails when it comes to a topic like a permit renewal, which has been a little frustrating.
0.
3.
Bermuda Dunes itself is in a great location. It's close to the big events like the tennis tournament and Coachella and Stagecoach. So that area does draw a lot of interest from festival goers during the month of April. But for the rest of the year, you're probably going to see slower demand compared to other parts of the valley.
Here's another key point. If you're looking at properties in the Bermuda Dunes Country Club, you aren't able to do short-term rentals there.
Yeah, the country club has a 30-day minimum for rentals within the gates. So that's something to watch out for if you are looking to do STR.
The country club, along with a couple other smaller HOAs, make up a bulk of the area considered Bermuda Dunes. So at the end of the day, there isn't a ton of housing here that is eligible for short-term rentals. So keep that in mind.
All right, let's move on to La Quinta, where golf and the festivals really shape the market.
La Quinta is a very popular destination, and there was a period of time where the demand for short-term rentals was just nonstop, but there have been some pretty big shifts lately.
Like other cities on the east side of the Coachella Valley, we've seen a return to a more seasonal market. So we're seeing higher demand in November through April, and then it really slows down after that.
But unless you already have a property in La Quinta with a short-term rental permit, that information likely isn't going to matter because the city isn't issuing new short-term rental permits in pretty much all of the city, except for a couple what they call tourist commercial zones, a couple HOAs, and that's it.
So far, the city has not taken away any existing short-term rental permits that were issued prior to 2020 for rentals in La Quinta Cove or those non-tourist commercial zones or non-HOAs. But it's important to note that permits will not transfer if a property with an existing short-term rental permit is sold.
So if you're buying here, your short-term rental options are limited to those specific areas. Otherwise, you're looking at midterm rentals.
And unfortunately, the city of La Quinta already has a large supply of midterm rentals, especially in the La Quinta Cove area. And this all started in 2020 when the city of La Quinta issued a temporary hold on new permits, but investors kept buying in anticipation of that hold being lifted.
But that turned into a permanent moratorium where investors were either faced with a choice to sell their property or rent it longer term, and many of those chose furnished midterm rentals.
With so much midterm rental inventory in La Quinta, it's led to a bit of a race to the bottom issue on pricing, which has had an especially hard hit on those larger homes.
We see larger 4-bedroom, 4-bath houses that would normally, you would think, command a higher price. They're forced to compete with smaller, more modest homes where the primary clientele is a snowbird, often just a couple who's renting the whole house.
This is why we personally would not invest in the city of La Quinta right now. The oversupply and seasonality make it a more challenging market and with lower returns than other parts of the valley.
But if you're watching and you have a property with a short-term rental permit in the city of La Quinta and maybe it's not performing as good as you would hope, let us know because we have some creative strategies and good ideas to turn your operation around.
So to recap La Quinta, The pros are strong seasonal demand from November through April and STR potential in designated areas for, and this is key, for exceptional properties. Your design and your setup need to be on point.
The cons are the moratorium on new permits and the fact that those permits don't transfer at sale. There's high competition, especially midterm rental competition, and there's price pressure due to oversupply.
So that's a wrap for La Quinta. Let's head a little further east to Indio, where the festival season really shapes the market.
This city is in the heart of the Coachella Valley's festival season, and there's ultra high demand during those specific festival weekends.
For those festival weekends, it's common to see high occupancy and very impressive pricing, but keep in mind that it's only 3 weekends out of the entire year.
Outside of the festival season, Indio's demand is similar to La Quinta's. You're gonna see good booking traffic in November through April, but only if you have an exceptional property because competition is high.
In our experience, Indio attracts a steady flow of visitors looking for a little more affordable accommodations versus Palm Springs or Palm Desert, or even sometimes La Quinta. But the difference that we see is that people are gravitating towards properties that are the destination, where they want to spend their whole weekend there, versus places like Palm Springs, where the house is a fun part of their experience in the rest of the city.
Indio's short-term rental regulations are pretty straightforward. They do have some rules around occupancy. You need a safety inspection from the city. They have quiet hours, etc. The permit fees are quite high at $1,600 per year, but in general, you kind of have the freedom to operate once you have a permit.
Property prices in Indio are also generally a little bit lower than properties further west in the valley, which makes it an interesting market for investors who want to get in at a lower price point.
One thing to consider though is that certain communities in Indio do have mellow roofs, which is effectively a bond tax added to your property tax bill to fund development in the city and schools, etc. So that can be a significant addition to your overall sort of tax liability on the year.
This is especially true in some of the newer developments. We've seen very high mellow-roofs in a community called Terra Lago on the north side of the 10 freeway, so North Indio.
So to recap Indio, you've got the strong festival demand, you've got pretty straightforward short-term rental regulations, and generally affordable prices.
The cons would be the seasonal nature of demand like other desert cities, but also very high competition, especially during the festival season.
Properties in Indio can be great performers, but you'll need to have a top design and very good amenities.
Finally, let's touch on the city of Coachella. Despite sharing its name with the famous festival, Coachella Festival is actually held in the city of Indio next door.
Wait, what?
Coachella has historically not been a vacation destination, but as prices have risen in other parts of the valley, investors have started looking and communities have started being built in Coachella that people are investing in.
You will need a permit like other desert cities, but Coachella is very close to the festival grounds in Indio, so you're going to see a lot of spillover demand from Indio during those peak festival weekends. But demand outside of those peak weekends is going to be a lot lower, and so it's going to require an exceptional property to attract guests other times of the year.
All right. If you stuck with us, we've covered all the desert cities in the greater Palm Springs area. So now we're going to talk about where we might invest if we were buying a property in 2025.
After being active in this market for the past 5+ years, our top pick for investing in 2025 would be a short-term rental in Palm Desert, specifically near the El Paseo area.
Here's why. Properties in Palm Desert have a steady year-round demand, and properties near El Paseo attract a diverse range of guests, from golfers to families to snowbirds. And we've seen firsthand how well a property can perform if well set up and well operated in this area.
So within Palm Desert, we'd look specifically for a property that is outside of an HOA, but inside of one of those designated short-term rental zones. Ideally something with a light rehab, just some cosmetic updates needed and not a full renovation.
This approach would allow us to add a lot of value with design and amenities without taking the time for a full overhaul or gut rehab. And that gets us to the market quicker and starts generating income.
For now, in 2025, we're steering clear of markets like Palm Springs proper due to high prices and saturation, and La Quinta because of the permit moratorium and oversupply.
We would consider Rancho Mirage and Indian Wells for midterm rentals if we were able to find the right property with a nice house, a nice pool and yard, where we could cater to longer term guests who want more of a luxurious experience.
Lastly, in 2025, we are intrigued by certain parts of Indian Wells, particularly a few HOAs close to the tennis gardens that allow short-term rentals.
So there you have it. That's where we would invest in the Coachella Valley in 2025. But your choice ultimately depends on your investment goals, your budget, and how much time you're willing to put into the property.
If you are considering investing in this area and need guidance, feel free to reach out. We will leave our contact details in the description below, or you can go to our website, arrivals.com. We can then put you in touch with our local trusted broker for property acquisition, or we can chat about design and setup of your property and eventually management.
And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more insider real estate tips in the short-term rental market.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.